We're going to talk about earthquakes? No. Yeah, I thought you want to talk about baseball.
Yeah, where are you on the Astros sign stealing scandal and the resulting punishment?
I wasn't going to be answering no Astros questions today.
That's right, Rook. That's right, Rook.
Baseball's where I belong. I don't care what field. I love this team. I want to be here forever. I want to be the Padres forever. But baseball is what I always love.
Since we're in the moment, is there a more annoying sports phrase than "get in the hole"?
Oh, you're saying for this? Oh, I was like, what are you talking about?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Marty Time TV. I am Marty Caswell. Thank you so much for joining me on this Friday. I am so happy it's Friday. It feels like the longest, most exhausting week, not just for sports, but just life in general, and the skies are gray. So thank you for joining me. Hopefully we can jump into a nice, long, happy weekend as we enter May. And if you're a Padres fan, man, April was interesting, but all things considered, all the adversity, all the injuries, 19-11, that's as good as you could have expected with the injuries. And I hope May should be a lot better because a Padres schedule is pretty soft in May. Games against the Angels, the Rockies, the Marlins, the Pirates. These are teams that they should absolutely beat up upon because the schedule in June gets a lot tougher. But I'm happy that you guys are joining me today. As promised, we're going to have the full conversation with Michael King talking about the Padres Avengers being back. That was perhaps my favorite conversation of the entire season because Michael King is a delight to talk to. We are, of course, talking about the Padres getting Jake Cronenworth later on this road trip. Jackson Merrill, of course, Luis Ariz and Jason Hayward arrived on Monday and made an immediate impact with the Padres. They are about to get a lot healthier. So we'll have that conversation. And speaking of the Padres, this is what Fernando Tatis Jr. had to say about having Luis Ariz back, right? The impact that he makes on the field, in the clubhouse, and also how the Padres played in the month of April when they went 19-11. Here is Fernando Tatis Jr.
Can't wait for my boy to be back, to be running the outfield together, and and hopefully he can get back at full strength.
Does Luis Ariz just changed instantly what you guys are able to do offensively?
He's definitely a spark in this lineup. He's a huge piece, and when he's not out there, you can definitely feel it, and when he's out there, you definitely see the difference. So happy he's back rolling with us.
Your next game you guys play will be month of May. What do you think that you guys showed in the month of April?
That we're capable of doing really good things, and but at the same time, we can't sit back and just relax and see everything just unfold. We got to go out there, make it happen, stay consistent, play good defense, and keep getting better on the plate every single day.
So that was Fernando Tatis Jr. on Wednesday talking about the Padres month of April, and yes, they should get a lot better. Guys, I know we spent so much time talking about Xander Bogaerts, and I feel like there was an extra spotlight on him because when the Padres were without Jake and Jackson, you want guys like Xander Bogaerts to go ahead and step up. Of course, he had a home run, his first 3 RBI games since August. But man, if you read his interview with Kevin Acee, and one thing I've said about Xander Bogaerts during his struggles, man, his struggles bother him. He wears it. You can see it in his face. And if you read that piece, man, I don't know that Xander Bogaerts would ever be the player that the Padres wanted him to be. The good news, and he feels it too. I mean, he knows that as well. You don't get better at the age of 32. There's no fountain of youth, but at least he doesn't need to carry the team. There's no expectation. So we'll see what happens. All right. Yeah, he does. What was this? I'm sorry. I'm distracted by all your comments. All right, guys. I need to shout out one of my listeners because when we had AJ Caswell on the show on Tuesday, and he joins us every single Tuesday, as he will from New York next week, so one of our listeners said, hey, the Avengers are coming. So I took that. I went into the Padres clubhouse. This is the ensuing conversation I had with Padres pitcher Michael King, who is easily my favorite interview in that case. Michael, if you don't like my line of questioning, there's one person to There's one person to blame, and it's Tyler Wade. Because I went over to him and I said, listen, are you a big Marvel fan? Do you like Avengers? He goes, no. He goes, but go ask the two biggest nerds in the clubhouse. And he pointed to you and Dylan Cease.
I'm not Marvel or Avengers.
What?
I've seen them, but I'm not. If you quiz me on anything Marvel or Avengers, I would fail.
Do you know who Thor is?
Oh, yeah. That's, guy with the hammer.
Yeah. Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man.
Big green guy. Spider-Man. I know the characters. You're telling me Wade doesn't know the characters?
He says he's never seen it. He knows who Spider-Man is, but he's not a Marvel person. He said the nerds do. You and Dylan.
I mean, I guess, okay. All right. Yeah, a little offended, but I feel like everybody in this locker room would know who those 3 characters you just named are.
I guess Tyler Wade.
Wade's just trying to be too cool. That's all it is. Yeah, absolutely.
He's just thinking about baseball all the time and nothing else.
In camera, and I'll ask him, and I guarantee you he'll know all those people.
I want that footage. Well, the reason why I went to ask Tyler, now I'm going to ask you. So one of our viewers today, when I was talking to AJ Caswell about Luis Ariz returning and Jason Hayward, a couple guys, he said, you know what? The Avengers are returning to the Padres. So let's go ahead and start with Luis Ariz. Which Avenger would Luis Ariz?
He's not going to like this, but I almost have him as like Ant-Man because he's going to like beat you to death with like little cuts. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Because he's not the Hulk coming in there and mashing. So I would start with that, and I love him. I love Louis, but that's his comp. And Jay Hay's got to be Captain America. Jay Hay's the guy that's the leader, that's built like Captain America in terms of muscle. Yeah. And it's just like a great presence to have in the locker room and in the dugout. And on the field. Yes,
absolutely. I want to see if you and I are like-minded in any way on Jackson Merrill. There's only one guy that came to mind when I thought about Jackson Merrill. I know he's not here yet, but he's hopefully close.
He's coming. Yeah. See, this is now you're testing my knowledge. I thought Ant-Man was a good pull.
It's a great pull. He's sneaky too. He's not the most powerful Avenger.
Yeah, but he's. Can I invite my fellow nerd? Dylan, come here real quick. Come here. Hold on. If somebody said that we're getting our Avengers back by the injuries that are coming back, who would you compare Ariz, Jason Hayward, and Jackson Merrill to in terms of an Avenger?
I've never really watched Avengers, to be honest
not
with
a nerd. He's a nerd in other ways.
I do play RuneScape sometimes. That's a little nerdy. And disc golf.
But you don't know anything then?
About the Avengers? That's Thanos, right? Is that Thanos?
She asked me, do you know who Thor is?
Yeah, Thor's the one with a hammer.
Yep.
So which one would be Thor?
No, I'm sure we're just asking you to see if you have general knowledge of the Avengers.
Very, very limited. I'm not into superhero stuff for some reason.
Okay. Wade said that we're the 2 biggest nerds on the team and we would know Avengers.
No, I'm nerdy in different ways. I am a nerd. I am definitely a nerd, but I don't know superhero stuff.
Okay, who'd you go with Jackson?
Spider-Man.
I can totally see that. Yeah, I guess you're right in that, but that's not how he plays. He plays much bigger than Spider-Man. And like
Who's Tony Stark?
Iron Man. If it was like, because didn't Tony Stark like take Spider-Man under his wing? Didn't he give him like his? If like you could have a baby between Iron Man and Spider-Man, it would be Jackson Merrill. Does that make sense?
Who are you?
Oh, I'm a nobody. I'm like the outside looking in, just happy that my Avengers are winning games.
Dylan Ceases.
Do you have one?
I'm gonna go Incredible Hulk, and let me go ahead and tell you why. No, because when he turns into the monster, he's unrecognizable. It's like facial hair when he shaves.
Power pitcher. So you're right. I like that one. Strictly for that, but we're not gonna. Don't put that out there to build up that ego. You know.
I won't talk about Dylan Cease that way.
Okay.
All right. You guys are gonna be in New York next week. What's it gonna be like for you? I think you're being pitching versus the Yankees, right, on Tuesday?
Yeah, it's. I missed them last year, so I had a bunch of my buddies saying I ducked them last year. So, but no, it'll be really fun. Obviously, my first time back at Yankee Stadium. I got a ton of family and friends that live in the area, so I know they'll be there. And it'd just be a cool experience. I've never been in the visitor locker room, but everybody says is a great locker room over there with the Yankees. So I'm really excited for it.
What do you miss most about playing in New York?
Probably the family and friends aspect of it. They come out here for the fun vacation for them, but staying here a little too long, getting kicked out. But like the family and friends, I was able to see all family, cousins, whenever I wanted, and it was like sporadic throughout the whole year. Now it's like they plan their vacations to come out here, which is awesome to see, but it's just not as much. So that's probably the thing I'll miss the most. Oh, Italian food. That's true. I totally had to switch my palate coming to San Diego.
Okay, so that was Michael King breaking down the Padres Avengers. Now, this is a guy that claims he knows nothing about them, but he knew Ant-Man, which is the weakest Avenger out of all of them. And he said, if Iron Man and Spider-Man had a baby, it would be Jackson Merrill. I will never unsee that. I thought Ant-Man was a perfect analogy for Luisa Rise. By the way, when I went and followed up with Tyler Wade, per his suggestion, he said that Jackson Merrill would be Batman. And I had to go ahead and remind him that Batman was not an Avenger. So he needs to get this straight. I did give him an assignment. Ball players have nothing but time on their hands on these long road trips on the plane. So I gave him an assignment of watching Ant-Man. He claims he will go ahead and do it. So that was a conversation with the always entertaining Michael King, who will return to Yankee Stadium on Tuesday. I mean, he'll be there Monday. He'll pitch Tuesday. And I'm sure you're going to have plenty of reporters talking about the Juan Soto trade, which the Padres won, because they still have Michael King. And of course, Michael King will be a free agent, and I'm sure the Yankees could use some pitching. So I'm sure that is going to be a line of questioning when he goes to New York. Okay. By the way, we are brought to you by the all-new Hamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. There's a lot I wish we had time to go ahead and talk about. If I had time to talk about Bill Belichick, and I'm wondering if what's happening with his girlfriend, his wacko girlfriend, if it's elder abuse, but that's a story for another day, because as promised, give me 1 second, I caught up with David Jay of Mad Friars. I saw him at Petco Park on the last homestand when Tirso Ornelas, one of the Padres' homegrown products. We don't say that very often. Homegrown guys don't stay in the organization for too long. They get traded oftentimes. Jackson Merrill's an exception. Tirso Ornelas, he had a long journey. This is as David promised, I'm delighted to welcome in David Jay from Mad Friars. I know all you Padres fans know Mad Friars well. I've talked to his colleague John Conniff several times, but I was delighted to see David Jay at Petco Park in this last homestand. And lo and behold, now I know why he was there making his guest appearance, because Tirso Ornelas made his long-awaited debut. If you're a Padres fan, David, number one, great to see you. But the last time that I spoke to John Conniff, your colleague, it's because the Padres had a slew of injuries on that disastrous road trip, right? They lost Jake Cronenworth, then they lost Jackson Merrill. And so the conversation was who was best suited to go ahead and come up and replace those guys. And lo and behold, we saw everybody in the farm system, Oscar Gonzalez, and then Tirso Ornelas making his debut. And of course, Brendan Lockridge was injured as well. And now they're all here. So David Jay, first and foremost, it's great to go ahead and see you again. How are you?
Marty, I'm doing really well. Thanks for the chance to catch up. And yeah, it was great to see you at Petco. It's really been quite a ride here for the organization in the last couple of weeks, but now they seem to be sort of stabilizing and not. And now the question is, what are we going to do as all those guys come back and they need to create roster space for them? But, I think Tirso in particular, we often try for Mad Friars, since our beat is the minor league side. We don't pull a lot of credentials to come to the big league games, but when a guy is making his debut, we like to get there. And certainly Tirso has been an amazing journey through this organization for going on 9 years. It was July 2nd, 2016 that he signed as part of that massive international free agency class that was going to remake the Padres organization. Hasn't quite done that, although certainly Adrian Morejon, who was the biggest cost in that class, has really established himself as a key contributor. And now to get Tirso here after all that time, after really an up and down journey, was a lot of fun. And so getting the chance to write about that and look back at what that journey's been for him was a piece that was a lot of fun to put together.
Right. And I know that there's always so much made about homegrown talent. And of course, if your GM happens to be AJ Preller, a lot of times that homegrown talent is flipped for elite talent like Juan Soto, which I know we can get to James Wood and Mackenzie Gore. I saw your predictions on Mackenzie Gore and his WAR, and boy, I can see you're going to probably pin that to your timeline, because Mackenzie Gore is sizzling right now and showing why he was initially the apple of AJ Preller's eye. So you can go ahead and learn about that later on.
And for all the grief that I'm taking, I want to note, I said that going into last season too.
Oh, okay.
And I wore it all year, putting a monthly update up to show that King was outperforming him. So, but I mean, yeah, and that's not a knock on King at all. It's just a reality of the stuff and age of Gore. But yeah, I think you look at the way Tirso's come through, right? This is a kid who's from Tijuana.
Right.
He grew up on Mondays. He'd come up to the border. His uncle would meet him at the border. They'd hop on the trolley and go to Petco to watch games.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not just homegrown, but this is a kid whose whole heart is invested in the organization.
Yes.
And so he has taken pride. Part of what I asked him about was like, what pride do you take in the organization sticking with you through all of it and keeping you here, right? And the B-roll you're showing with all the Tijuana media, right? This means a lot to him, that not just he finally made it to the big leagues, but that he made it to the big leagues here. And he's a guy who is the living embodiment of the phrase we say all the time, that player development is not linear. He, in 2017, his first stateside season, he was a huge producer out in the desert. In 2018 was it looked good, but there were some questions. 2019, the wheels totally came off. He was up in Lake Elsinore at that point, and things went sideways enough that they sent him back out to Arizona to rework everything for almost 2 months. He kind of put things back together. Then the last year to the pandemic, coming back from that, 21 was fine, but at this point, all those guys from that signing class at the end of that year needed to be protected for the Rule 5 draft. And his was not a name that ever came up as we've got to make sure we protect him, or some other team's going to take a chance on him, right? And one of the things that I enjoy about the way we cover the system is we get to see the way guys develop over time. And John, back in 2023, when Tirso was out in AA in San Antonio, had a great interview that's actually linked in the piece that I just wrote, where his manager and Pat O'Sullivan, who's now on the big league coaching staff, brought him into the office in San Antonio in early June and essentially said, are you doing what you need to do to get where you say you want to be? Because they were seeing fine effort and fine performance, but not exceptional effort and exceptional performance. And Tirso said, I started to ask him about it, and media relations provides a translator, but his English is better than my Spanish. And even before they'd gotten a chance to do the translation, he laughed when I referenced it. And he said, I remember that day, right? And they changed things for me. And so that trajectory, to me, is what's fun about talking about and watching player development in the minor league system. So now he gets here, and obviously I think it's a fairly short cup of coffee for this first pass at it.
Yes.
But it's not going to be the last, and that's really cool to see.
Yeah, I know that. Who was it? I forget, one of our listeners last week or viewers this week said, hey, the Padres are getting their Avengers back. And I actually played, before you came on, I had a fun conversation with Michael King, breaking down the Padres Avengers. Those guys are going to be back. But he did get his moment. I mean, hopefully it was a good learning opportunity for him. Had a great conversation with him, right? Saw family, tons of friends in from Tijuana. Yeah. He mentioned growing up, a huge Padres fan. And of course, he idolized Adrian Gonzalez. And why would you not, being, coming from Mexico? But that was a good conversation. So Tirso Ornelas.
I think he really does see himself playing into a role where, 15 years from now, some kid from Tijuana is going to say, I'm a fan of the Padres because of Tirso Ornelas, right? And that's, he wears that. And that's a really important part of his identity in this organization.
That was great. People want to go ahead and read more about Tirso Ornelas. I do want to get to a couple other players. And you have a nice piece up there on madfriars.com. I highly recommend. Really, really well done. Okay. Did you mention David Morgan? No. We saw David Morgan. Speaking of guys who may not be with the Padres too long, a couple terrific pieces.
And who grew up Padres fans. I mean,
yeah, of course.
He's a San Diego County kid. He was sort of back and forth between here and Orange County. And just an amazing success story for, for a long time. People have said, oh, the Padres organization, they're great at drafting, but they don't do player development well. They don't do pitching development well. Well, certainly on the drafting side, he's a remarkable story, right? He was an undrafted free agent. There were 3 players on opening day big league rosters across the league who were undrafted free agents, right? This is the hardest path to reach the big leagues. And so he not only was an undrafted free agent, he was an undrafted free agent out of Hope International University, the existence of which I was completely unaware of until I started writing about David a couple of years ago. He was a guy who spent 3 years in junior college as an outfielder, went to Hope International as an outfielder, and probably right about this time in the spring, the coach came to him and said, hey, would you be interested in hopping on the mound? And I think there could be something there for you. So 3 years ago today, he was an outfielder at a tiny NAIA school that has never put anybody in the big leagues.
Wow.
And today he is in Pittsburgh as part of the Padres bullpen, right? So, but it's not just the scouting success of it. It is the player development side. And Clark Farrenhold, who writes for us, had a really nice piece that we published yesterday that David talks about. He grew up with this, big, he started playing around with this big old leg kick, grew up a Trevor Hoffman fan. Yeah. He talks about being teammates with Wyatt, Trevor's son, who's in the Padres organization, and Wyatt giving him grief about it. But it was what he did because it's what he'd seen, but it wasn't really working for him. And so the player development work of finding a spot that allowed his fastball, which plays up in the upper 90s, and to turn his slider from an interesting offering to something that he can really locate 2 different quadrants, throw it for swinging strikes when he wants, and throw it to land in the strike zone and keep hitters honest. He came up because of the injuries. We know that Sean Reynolds is coming up to the end of his rehab assignment. The Padres are going to go back to a 5-man rotation here next week.
Probably New York. Yes.
Right. They've got a pretty decent rotation option who they're hoping to see back in the big leagues, certainly within the next 30 days.
Hopefully by the Dodger series, Dodgers and Giants, and those
really
split games in June.
Right?
Yes.
Morgan is with them right now. He was added to the 40-player roster, which is again just a huge ship for him. He'll likely head back down, but he's part of a really deep group of high leverage relievers that can be of value to the club. That right now, where do you put somebody who's a reliever in this bullpen? But he's in the mix along with Bradley Rodriguez, along with Francis Pena.
That's great.
Who give them some amazing depth there.
That's great. You can, and I know we're saying where do you put them, but if you're the Padres, really, if you're any team in baseball, you could never have enough pitching depth ever. That's what gets you through to the end. The Padres got challenged early on offensively, but those pitching injuries come. We know that, so that's great to go ahead and have those options. David Jay, thank you so much. I have a couple more questions before I let you go. By the way, before I get to my next topic with Dree and the Salas injury situation, one thing that's jumped out of this conversation, right? There's been so many times where I've talked to players that have, made their debut with the Padres and they grew up fans of like the Angels or the Dodgers or something else. It's kind of cool that we're having these conversations about these players being fans of the Padres, and hopefully that it's a culture shift, right? There's a reason to go ahead and there are generations of fans who are growing up Padres fans because they have been so much fun to watch, right? All right.
Exactly.
So you mentioned Sean Reynolds. Check. That's good. He's hopefully he's making a comeback soon. Let's see, let's go with DeVry. I mean, I know he has been absolutely sensational. I remember the question was posed to like AJ Preller in spring training, who's likely to come up sooner, DeVry or Salas? And just even then, I thought the answer was going to be DeVry. And of course, you don't want to rush anybody, but can you just go ahead and put in your own words how spectacular his progress has been for this teenager, for this prospect?
It's pretty remarkable. You know, somebody on X the other day asked us for a comp, right?
Okay.
And I always think there are sort of two parts to that, right? On the one hand, there's the like, who does he look like? What are the traits? But to me, the first thing that I think of is who's a guy who, like, you look at him and you go, oh my God, he really is just different and better than everyone out here, right? And the two guys I had that experience with Fernando Tatis. I saw him when he was on the diamond in Peoria, the very first summer he was in the organization. He probably had 25 professional at bats at that point.
He jumps at you.
Yeah, and you just look at him and you're like, there aren't people who do that, right? He moves different. He just all of it, right?
He checks every single box, physically, athletically. It's just like when I saw him in spring training, I'm like, whoa, this kid's wired different. He's mature, but I know you've seen him up close, and I really haven't done that, but it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other guy for me who was in that group was Carlos Correa, who I saw 2 weeks after he was drafted. You know, he's the first overall draft pick, and it's like, oh, right, that's the guy who was the first overall draft pick. It requires no explanation as to why, right? But even once you get to then like the profile of who he is, right? He's a switch hitting shortstop with plus power on both sides of the plate. He's above average bat to ball, or he's going to get to above average bat to ball. The list of players who meet that description, you're talking a floor of like Ketel Marte, and then you're talking Lindor, J-Ram, Wander Franco, right? That's the category of players he's in. And he's an 18-year-old who's leading the Midwest League in OPS. I think as of this morning, he's fallen all the way to second in slugging percentage, right? That's uncommon. That just isn't what you see, right? He weathered through figuring out what to do with 40-degree game time temperatures, and
life adjustment.
This week, his Tuesday performance, he was 3 for 3, a triple short of the cycle, a walk, and interestingly, a sacrifice bunt mixed in, scored 2 runs, drove in 3. And that was a downgrade from the Tuesday before that, right? When he hit for the cycle and had an extra home run just for the heck of it, right? So, he also has plenty of things he still needs to work on and develop. He's committed 6 or 7 errors, even though he's only playing every other day or so in the field. Most of those have come from just not having his timing in the game situation quite right. His tools are there, but he needs time there. He's going to need some time as he starts to see pitchers who can work the count backwards with him and start him off with a slider that's in the zone for a taken strike 1. And then come back with that same pitch the next time, starting on the outside corner, working away from him, right? Like that stuff's going to happen. But I mean, clearly he is on a trajectory that, you would expect us, if he keeps this up and he stays healthy, which is also another variable for him, right?
Yes.
He lost time last year with injuries to both shoulders. I think they are doing everything they can to make sure he's taking care of his body in that regard, and sliding feet first and all that sort of stuff to protect the shoulders. But it's a guy who you would probably expect to see in San Antonio by the middle of the summer. And if there's one thing that you can say with great certainty about AJ Preller's San Diego Padres, it's they don't have a problem pushing a guy quickly from Double-A to the big leagues. And presumably they'd even let him do it at a position he's played before.
Are we talking shortstop? It's the Padres. You just never know.
Right.
I mean,
they have a gap at catcher. Maybe they'll have him a catcher.
Oh, come on, gap at catcher. Come on. I mean, but then again, it's the Padres and it's Preller, so I'm never gonna.
Anything, right?
But listen, hopefully they don't. I mean, I know the organization faced criticism for for promoting Ethan Salas too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully they have the luxury of time, and this is not something that they need to go ahead and do. Last thing I want to ask you, and thank you for your time. I had promised you 10 minutes, but wildly entertaining, right? I would never keep John Conniff this long.
Well, you just have to speak slowly with him,
Okay,
so
okay.
it might take as long. Yeah.
Okay. Ethan Salas injured.
Yeah.
What is going on with Salas this season?
Yeah, so he went on the IL with a back injury. The last game he played in, which was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I think 2 weeks ago last night. You could see it earlier in the game that he was sort of stretching and trying to get loose, and then he had a hit, and then he was trying to go first to third on a hit behind him, and you could just see his back had tightened up on him, and they pinch ran for him. They kept him on the active roster for the next almost week while they were trying to see what could happen. It kept tightening up on him. I don't think anybody's concerned that it's a long-term issue, but they wanted to really give him the space. So they put him on the IL, and the timeline for return is really when it doesn't hurt, right? I mean, that's the advanced medical practice on an injury like that, right?
Good.
Doctor, it hurts when I do this, then stop doing that. Right?
Then don't do it. Then abundance of caution with that kid. I mean, they have to, right? Okay.
Yeah. Good. And I mean, his numbers aren't jumping off the page to start the year, but he's not striking out. He's taking his walks, and defensively, I would put him in the upper third of big league catchers today.
Okay.
So,
wow. That's good to know. Okay. Yeah. David Jay, you have been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It's May 2nd. Yeah. Are you a Star Wars fan, Avengers fan? Where do you go?
I lean Star Wars and Star Trek, not so much MCU and
Star Trek.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I can say this to you as we sign off, and thanks again. Again, Padres fans, I highly recommend subscribing to Mad Friars, reading their phenomenal content. They do great work across all the affiliates, and of course, you can follow David Jay on Twitter or on X, Twitter. Are you in Threads?
No, I'm trying to show up on Blue Sky some more, but it's tough. Yeah. But and on X, you can follow us as a group at Mad Friars or me individually at DNJAY. The stuff at Mad Friars that's spelled correctly and clever is mine. The rest is John's. And yeah.
Okay. Well, good deal. All right. Well, listen. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining me today, Padres fans. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend. You know what Sunday is, so I'll sign off just saying this: May the 4th be with you. What a nerd.
Just winning some ball games, man. We're back to ourselves. Obviously we got some help, and we got some healthy guys back in the lineup that made it a lot better. But our pitching staff did a really good job, man. And offensively, we hit runners in scoring position. Like I said last weekend, we didn't take advantage of those spots. We had opportunities to score some runs, and we didn't. We didn't do it. And we made an adjustment this series, and we came out with 2 victories.
The adjustment, the adjustment with runners in scoring position?
I mean, I think it was just, we felt lonely out there. We missed our guys. And, we missed them in the clubhouse. They were gone for a whole week, and we just felt empty. And they were back, so they're a big part of, our ball club, and they bring a lot of energy.